Good morning. It's June the 2nd. How is everybody doing today? Me, not so good. I had joined a sewing summit. I paid for my all access pass, and I can't get in to see it. So I'm a little perturbed. But that's okay. We'll get it all sorted out eventually. Right? I did want to tell you I'm still working on the Perfect Pocket Shawl by Sonia Hood. And this pattern I got on, I want to say Etsy, at her Knots Yourself Out. I think that's her Etsy shop. I'll try to find it and link it down below for that shawl. I am about 6 rows from having this one finished, and then I will need to start my son's, which I did purchase some yarn. And the yarn that I purchased, sorry for the crinkle, the yarn that I purchased was Premier Coffee Shop because he wanted something in these color tones. And I thought this would be perfect. The pattern here calls for landscape, which is a number 4 yarn. But I think it can be done with this. This is a number 3 weight, and this is in the color steel, I believe. Yeah, steel. But this is what my son had wanted, so I'll be starting that pretty soon. As soon as I get this finished, which I'm going to work on that today. Other than that, I did tell you that I've been sewing. And, you know, practicing with the knit. And what I've been making are yarn cozies. And these yarn cozies, basically you just fit them around the yarn, your cakes. This one's a little difficult. It's a little smaller than some of the other ones. And then it would hold your yarn pretty much the same way I do when I do the pantyhose. It'll hold it so that while you're crocheting, knitting, it doesn't collapse on itself and create a tangle, which I'll tell you, with using the pantyhose the way that I do, I've never had an issue with tangling. And it basically sits around your like a little sock can cozy, you know. And you can either pull from the center or pull from the outside. It works either way. Normally I would take off the label on this, but I just decided to leave that on there for this one, so you can see how I can float with it. But yeah, I've just been practicing, you know, making up a couple. Working with that long stitch and figuring out what stitch length and, you know, the pressure on the foot, because when you're working with knit, you have to release the pressure on your presser foot. So, did that. And then the only other thing I did is I made a duffel bag with a zipper. This is one of the bags that I have had in mind to do to begin with for selling on the shop. Now this one, I will admit, I just used regular old SF 101 stabilizer on both pieces. And I had debated about whether to use Decaville Light or like a fusible fleece. Has an inside pocket. And I just never got to that point. I just decided to try it this way. This was a test. And I do like the pattern. And I'll be making some more of those, but I'll be using different stabilizer, different innards on it to see what works the best. Because when you start using like Decaville Light, it's a great stabilizer for purses and bags, but it's kind of expensive. So if you're going to sell them, you'd have to sell them for a much higher price point. And, you know, I'm like, I just want to make it and you guys get it, you know? So that's the one thing I like about making bags, is doing that. I have also made in the past quite a few what are called game day bags, for those people that are going to football games, basketball games, high schools. You know, nowadays most of them you have to have a see-through vinyl to bring in items into the auditoriums, stadiums, those kind of things. And these bags, basically, they just have a nice strap out of a certain fabric, and then, you know, a strip either on the bottom or the top of the bag that is vinyl, so that you can go into the stadium for those things. But I've done those in the past for our local university and for those that are attending Penn State. But I haven't branched out any further than to play with it. So I've been playing with those bags too. Do I have one finished? No, they're all in the process of being made. But I kind of stepped away from making masks for a little bit. Although, quite honestly, with all the protest, well, some of them are protesters, some of them are just out there for trouble. But with all the protests and everything, and I think there's going to be another wave. So I believe mask making will again be in my future. I was hoping that, you know, I could just continue to work on about 100 a week instead of 200 or 300 a week. So, and those are going mostly to nursing home facilities that need them, those kind of things. But, yeah, it's getting kind of crazy. I don't think protests help. I'm going to be real honest here. Because while you're out there protesting and you're doing these things and peacefully, whatnot, you're sending out a message, and, you know, politicians are saying, okay, we're going to change it, we're going to do things, and nothing happens. You had a feel-good movement by doing the protesting, but then you're not ready to do any of the other work. And I do mean you, me, as an individual. You know, I don't think real change comes from just protest. I think it comes from people who, after the protest, are willing to go to the city council meetings, the county council meetings, to really look into their the people they voted into these offices that have just given you lip service about, yeah, I'm going to change this, I'm going to do this, and they don't ever do anything. You don't sit down and have a conversation with the police chief about, you know, what's going on with your department, why is the training so bad, why is this continuing, you know, those kind of things. We're willing to put our foot to the pavement for a protest, but we're not willing to go any further than that. And we continue to vote the same people in who, quite frankly, like I said, just gave you lip service, and they're not really there to work to do change, you know. And I see that a lot. And that's where I think if you're truly passionate about that cause, about stopping this, then you need to be willing to go in and do some of the hard work yourself. Work with these community leaders. one-on-one. I'm serious. I want change. You've got to constantly call them on it, because otherwise we're creatures of habit. We go back to the easiest way possible, and unfortunately that means they're going to continue this kind of crap. And I will say this, for the most part, most of the police officers are absolutely on the up and up, want to make a better change for their community and protect everyone in their community. I do think along the way sometimes they get hardened because they may see the dirty cops that they work with, and they've, tried everything they can do to get rid of them, yet police unions protect them very well. And it's pretty difficult to get rid of someone who is a bad apple. That's true in most every workplace you're in. So, but to take it out on people that are absolutely innocent, destroy your community, the way we've been seeing this past week, it doesn't solve a thing. It just adds to it. It adds to the hurt. It creates more problems in the long run, because now you have police officers that you've been throwing bricks and bottles at, piss on, and attacking them, and they think you're a bad person. So you've not only not changed their mind, you've proven what an ugly type of person you are. So I don't know what the answer is for that, but I just don't believe protests work enough. I think we actually have to go in and work with these entities and to do some service work in that area ourselves. I think if you're going to protest, fine, but follow up. Just don't do a protest for a couple of weeks. Make yourselves feel good because you walk the streets carrying the signs. Actually go in and do some work to help change. We can all change this if we're willing to step up and do some of the work. And actually, some of that starts with our leadership. Vote in good leadership. If they're not doing what they say they were going to do, vote them out. Quite simply. George Floyd's brother Terrence had it absolutely correct. Educate yourself on these people you're voting in. Vote. That's how you get real change. It doesn't happen in an empty bottle. So, yeah. They're just, like I said, you have dirty cops. We've seen them all around, So, it's really difficult to get rid of a dirty cop. And that's because there have been so many things put in place with the city, with their unions, that it's just difficult. And I will tell you, this hurts me. My very best friend, my soul friend, and I say soul friend, soulmate, Anita Lee. I loved her to death, loved her mother to death. And unfortunately, Anita had cervical cancer and passed away very young. But we talked about this often. Why? Because she was black. And she understood what I was saying about being willing to step up and work and be part of the change yourself, not just protesting. And I've been very lucky to be a part of her family and her daughter's family. Up until her mother passed. Her aunt, her uncle, her father, we're still in touch. love them dearly. But we talked about this, and I'm going to tell you the story of what happened one day. As teenagers, whenever we went into a local store to shop alone without parents, we were all followed. Well, there was this one day I went a separate way than Anita went. Anita had gone over to look up makeup, and I've never been a big makeup person to begin with. And I went over to look at some shirts because I was wanting to buy a shirt. Got my shirt, bought my shirt, and as we're leaving, she said, "You know, the security guy was following me around." And I said, "Well, he follows one or each of us or both of us all around all the time. What's the difference?" She looked at me and she goes, "Well, I stole some eyeshadow." And I said, "Anita, you know that was wrong." She goes, "Yeah, but it just pissed me off, him following me like that. Wanted to see if I could do it under his nose." So Anita and I had a good conversation about that wasn't right. You know, you are doing exactly why he was following you. He didn't trust you. And we had a good laugh about that. And of course, her Aunt Mamie, we were staying over at her house with Aunt Mamie. Aunt Mamie read her the right, gave her a come to Jesus moment. And we both went back to take it back, you know, to apologize to the store. And Anita had her say with the security guard about him following her and that kind of stuff. And the security guard, this Hispanic, he started laughing. He goes, "I don't trust any of you girls when you come in here." He said, "Y'all look like you're up to no good to begin with." So, and he was probably right because we were teenagers, you know, you do stupid stuff. But Anita and I had a good conversation about being followed as being someone who is of color. And as she grew and she went off to Boston and then to California to Stanford, we talked about it quite frequently. And I said, "Well, what do you think can make it change?" She goes, "I don't know. I don't think it will ever change. It's a preconceived notion that we both have of each other, and we've refused to give up on those preconceived notions." So, I don't know what the answer is. Honestly, I don't. Um, I see just as many black cops that are dirty that, you know, they do the same thing to their own brothers, if you want to call it that. Um, recently there was a story about a black officer who was choking a black teen. Nobody said anything about that. So, I don't know what the answer is. I don't think you're ever going to get rid of preconceived notions of other people. We all have them. White, black, Asian, Hispanic, we've all got them. And we all believe that it's not going to change. So, I don't know. Pray, vote, educate. Those are things I think we can do to actually do some change, as well as getting in there and doing the footwork to change things. So, that's it for today. I don't know how I got off on that diatribe. But, yeah, things do need to change. Do I think they'll change easily? No. Change is never easy. Seriously. Think about a bad habit you have that you want to change. It's difficult. It takes a while. So, yeah, and like I said, with the looters and the rioters, they're not helping the cause. They're just creating more anger. Destroying your community is not the answer, because the only one you hurt is you and your community. And too many times we've seen these communities that have been destroyed, like Watts and Unfortunately, the one in Baltimore, Ferguson, they've never come back. They've never really gotten back to where they were. And I just don't think that those things help things. So, and yeah, I understand why we're focusing on the looting and the rioting, because it's the worst part of this. You know, I don't mind you. I don't care if you're out there protesting peacefully. That's perfectly fine. But then when you stand back and you watch the looting and the rioting, that angers me. Because I hate seeing people's livelihoods destroyed, their buildings, their communities torn down. You know, it's like the one woman in Minneapolis said, they burned down the CVS, destroyed it. They burned down where I get groceries. Buses aren't running. I have no way to get my prescriptions. I have no way to get groceries. So what did you do? You just hurt. You continue the hurt. So, anyway, let's move on to what in tarnation. Knocking on Florida couple's door was 2 alligators fighting. Can you imagine that? I wonder if there's video. There is. Or at least pictures. A Florida couple who were knocking at their front door and looked outside to find a pair of unwelcome visitors. 2 alligators fighting on their stoop. Sue Geschel said she was at home with her husband Joe in Fort Myers when they heard the banging at their front door. Geschel said Joe looked outside and told her there were some wild visitors at the door. I thought he was joking because we had so much to do and so much on his mind. I thought he was going crazy, he said. She said, all of a sudden there was a loud pounding, and that's when I got involved because it sounded like someone was pounding on my front door and needed some help. Geschel said she was shocked to see her husband was correct. 2 alligators were fighting for territory on their front stoop. Geschel recorded footage of the gators as they did battle right outside her door. She said the reptiles left on their own after about 20 minutes. Crazy. Soldier's letter home from Vietnam delivered 52 years later. Good job, Post Office. Good job. An Indiana woman said she was surprised when a letter her brother sent while serving in Vietnam finally made its way to her after 52 years. Janice Tucker said an envelope postmarked May 10th, 2020. May 10th, 2020. Arrived at her home in North Vernon last week. She was shocked to discover it contained a letter from her brother, William Lone, had sent her while he was serving in Vietnam in 1968. So I called my brother. He lives in South Carolina. I read the letter to him and he said, I remember writing that letter to you. Tucker told WASAS TV, Lone said he remembered putting the letter in an envelope, affixing a 5-cent stamp, and handing it off to another soldier to mail to his sister at the family's then home in Floyd's Knobs, Indiana. Tucker said the letter was not in the original envelope when it arrived at her home, indicating someone had found it and tracked down her current address. The fact that this letter came to me 52 years later by way of Indy is a real mystery to me, she said. Tucker said, this is not the original envelope. Someone found this and found out who I was. She said the envelope didn't contain many clues about the letter's long journey. Thank you to whoever found this letter. Thank you to whoever sent it to me. But most of all, thanks to my brother for being the big brother that I didn't really love and appreciate until I got older. Isn't that true about most of us and our family members? And this letter just makes me want to honor him more, she said. Tucker said she's hoping to find out who mailed the letter to her home so she can thank them and find out what happened to the letter in between being mailed in 1968 and arriving at her home last week. A Canadian man had a piece of mail take a shorter but no less mysterious route to his home. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, it's bad enough that we have COVID-19 that we're all dealing with worldwide. But then we have a group of monkeys who attacked a laboratory assistant in India and ran off with 3 coronavirus blood samples taken from patients. Do we see worldwide disaster here? Local authorities said the lab technician was carrying the 3 blood test samples for COVID-19 testing at Marut Medical College in Uttar Pradesh when he was attacked by a troop of monkeys that quickly fled with the samples. One of the monkeys later was caught on video chewing on one of the stolen samples while sitting in a tree. Officials at the medical college said new samples were taken from the patients so testing could be completed. Well, la-di-da. Medical experts have raised fears that the monkeys could cause the virus to spread more quickly if it is determined that the patients who were being tested were indeed infected with COVID-19. You think? After all, that's how we got HIV, was through monkeys. So, here we go. Monkeys on the rampage. And my husband and I, my husband is a geologist. So quite often, students that come through and get their geology degrees work for different oil companies in different places of the world. And one of our friends had gotten a job in Jakarta. And she said, it's no lie, these monkeys come in here like they own the place. And she said they'll come up in groups and you either need to hide or leave and let them destroy whatever they're going to destroy or do whatever they're going to do and move on. She said it's awful. And she said the problem is these people won't do anything to these monkeys. She's like, I'm thinking let's get out the 40, she's like, I'm thinking get the pistol out and shoot them. And no, they won't do that. And that's because of the culture. And that's fine. But she said it was terrifying. To have them come in like that. She'd be working and all of a sudden you see a monkey. And she said, and they got their little banditos with them. And they're wreaking havoc. She said it was quite a scary thing. Now we're going to talk about that Canadian man and his mail. Canadian man receives package ordered 8 years earlier. Way to go, mail service. A Toronto man said he was surprised and confused when a package showed up at his home containing a product he had ordered 8 years earlier. Elliot Berenstein said a Canada Post delivery worker left the package from Well, Canada on his doorstep May 6th, and he was initially confounded about its origins. I was very confused because I hadn't ordered anything from Well, Canada in a while, Berenstein told CBC News, and then I remembered one time about 8 years ago I ordered something from them. The package included a tube of Brill cream, a hair styling product he had ordered in 2012 along with an invoice dated that year. I started laughing because I thought it was pretty funny that it came 8 years later. He said he checked the packing's tracking code but found it no longer was valid. I think it was just in a corner somewhere and then someone just decided to mail it. I thought it was pretty funny that they just didn't throw it out or something. I wonder why now they sent it out since they're pretty far behind on their current packages and stuff. You think? A Canada Post representative said the late package is being investigated. This is certainly a unique situation, and we can only speculate at this point as to what may have happened, the representative said in a statement. Berenstein said he elected not to attempt to use the Brill cream. When I opened it, it was bright yellowed, and when I Googled it, I'd never used it before. It seemed it was supposed to be white, so I didn't try it. And that was probably a very good option. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen the video on this one, but it was quite terrifying to watch the video. Honestly, my breath was just, bear follows 12-year-old boy on a hiking path. And yeah, there's video. A family out for a hike in northern Italy captured video of the moment a brown bear following a 12-year-old boy down a mountain path. The video, recorded in a hiking trail in Trentino, shows a boy named Alessandro walking slowly towards his family while the Marsican brown bear follows. Loris Calaria, the boy's stepfather, was behind the camera at the time. He said Alessandro, an avid animal lover, wanted a photo with the bear. He got more than a photo. I noticed that he was moving, and I told Alessandro to walk slowly, to be careful, that I will take a picture, but to move, he told CNN. I was nervous at first, but then saw that the bear was not scared, was not acting, so I calmed down. He said the boy's mother and grandmother were less calm and screamed as the bear approached. And I'm going to tell you, that's the wrong thing to do. Calaria said Alessandro kept his cool during the encounter and had recently watched a YouTube video that stressed the importance of staying calm with bears around. And yes, that's very important. That's it. Everybody have a great day. Pray for our nation. Pray for the people. And educate yourself on the people you're electing. And if you don't see that they're making the change they said they were going to make the change, then you need to go in and start working towards getting that change. Specifically, get more involved than just walking a protest line. Everybody have a great day, and I will see you later. And remember, choose kindness.